If you've ever wondered, is this my ADHD or is it the trauma talking? You're not alone. Today, we'll unpack how ADHD and trauma, especially CPTSD, overlap, why that confuses the diagnosis, how traumatic stress can worsen ADHD symptoms, and practical steps that you can take this week. Truth tellers, welcome back to the ADHD Scapegoat podcast. I'm Angie.
I'm Jeremy. And quick disclaimer to start this episode. This is educational, not medical advice. Talk to your clinician.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start off by acknowledging that there is a relationship here. ADHD and trauma show up together a lot, and that matters for care.
Yeah, so we discussed in the last episode about after 15 years, me going back and getting my full diagnosis. And, you know, there's lots of different studies. The Psychiatry Advisor, Biomed Central, has a ton of different studies on this, but I'm referencing that here because it's very important since there isn't much that we know. We're discovering new stuff every day. This is finally, you know, not only is ADHD finally actually being recognized, but, you know, CPTSD isn't really recognized in the United States yet. It's not, you know, the overlap is just finally the pattern that is, you know, coming to light. So there's still questions being asked, and there's still a lot of confusion, and even yourself being the person like I did, you know, do I have ADHD? Is it just trauma, or is it just ADHD and it's not trauma? And, you know, there's a lot of questions behind it. So ADHD is neurodevelopmental, and it affects your nervous system. You do have a natural, you have a gene that your predisposition, that gives you a predisposition to ADHD. And then trauma is exposure-based. But the studies show that ADHD and trauma co-occur at high rates and interact a lot. So ADHDers that are adults that have high ACE scores, which is the adverse childhood experience, they report higher ADHD symptoms across the lifespan. So they'll remember things from when they were children that are also showing up as an adult, and sometimes it just morphs into something different. Like your hyperactivity as a kid might have been physical, and maybe as you turn into adult, due to, you know, societal structures, it's more internalized, but you still have that hyperactivity there, right? And so, as we all know that, and we've talked about it a bunch, but ADHD is rarely standalone diagnosis, so there's usually some sort of comorbidity, but the comorbidity of ADHD and CPTSD is common. And I will reference Attitude magazine all day, every day, but clinicians and advocates increasingly note these tight associations between the symptoms echoing from ADHD and traumatic stress. And they have a lot of different articles that have been coming forward, especially with women. You know, they do a whole month on focusing on women. So it's a wonderful resource. So go check out their information around this.
Yeah, I love ADHD, or Attitude magazine.
Yeah.
I mean, I love ADHD, but I love Attitude magazine too, which their last issue was the women's issue, right? Or I'm getting mixed up.
It's okay. They're all good. I mean, you get 4 a year. They're quarterly, but
they're so good for like people like me who need to learn more. But you learn something new every time you read it.
There's always new studies. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom subscribed to it, so she could learn more about her grandchildren, and it's what a great resource. So back on topic, are you saying that ADHD can cause trauma, or trauma can cause ADHD?
Well, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff out there right now that seems like controversial, because your genetic ADHD is not caused by trauma. You have this predisposition, and it just shows up in different ways. That's why, ADHD is a snowflake in the sense of none of the people who have ADHD present exactly the same. Did I say that? That's probably, I put too many words into that. Anyway,
it was
an ADHD
word
long run-on sentence of words. Yeah. Okay, but ADHD can, obviously, from the ADHD Scapegoat, increase exposure to traumatic experiences. So this traumatic stress can mimic ADHD symptoms, or it can magnify your ADHD symptoms. So, and Gabor Mate was on Mel Robbins' podcast like a year or two ago, and she was recently diagnosed after diagnosing her son, and he was saying that genetic predisposition is, there in people who have the genetic predisposition to ADHD, but your environment determines the degree in which it will impact your life. So if you're talking about symptom overlap and why these diagnoses are messy, here's why. So when you have ADHD or you have trauma, you'll have inattention and distractibility. Both of those things will be present. You'll have restlessness. You'll have moments of hyperarousal where you can't calm down. The working memory glitches and time blindness both happen with ADHD and trauma. The emotional dysregulation, rejection sensitivity, sleep problems, those come with both as well. So when you're looking at the hypervigilance that's present with both, hypervigilance is part of your lifelong executive function issues with ADHD. When you add trauma on top of it, your hypervigilance is nonstop. Like with your ADHD, you might be just hypervigilant of certain noises or, certain things kind of force you to react. And it's just a pattern. And everywhere, at home, at school, at work, whatever, it kind of always shows up. Whereas the trauma, and I wrote it down. We're going to talk about it, but it's more of like situational, where it's like you're having a trauma response to a situation that feels familiar to a previous traumatic situation. But the hypervigilance, oh my God, you already are hypervigilant as an ADHDer, and then your hypervigilance goes through the roof when you pile on, these narcissistic family systems that pile it onto you, right?
Sure.
And you have to be aware for survival. Like you just have to.
Is that kind of like the story you've told a couple of times about your brother would come in your room and mess up your cars when you were like, you knew he was going to do that, so you kind of set a little trap for him where you had your cars lined up?
Well, I had to worry about that just to go to the bathroom.
Right, but that's the hypervigilance.
Right.
Like you knew something was going to happen. You had to mentally prepare yourself for
always
coming back to your room to something happened or it will happen.
Right. Think about the mental space that takes up. Just having to go to the bathroom as a child, all these thoughts were happening because of my lived experience.
Yeah, you're just always on edge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to, that's, the hyperactivity, like, oh, a kid's so hyper, they can't calm down. Well, they're naturally hypervigilant, and now they have to be on all the time. There's also, triggered or situational spikes in some of the symptoms with trauma. Like I said, it's more of like, when someone say, oh, I'm being triggered, bringing up a past memory of something, whether it's like a smell, a sound, or, every day when you hear your parents drive in the driveway, it's that thing, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas ADHD, like I said, it's more of, they call it like a cross-context pattern, which means that while your symptoms can vary in intensity, right, depending on the situation, like, you know, you can find it easier to focus on tasks when you're in your room, quiet with brown noise. But if, and you can, and again, you can only do it if it's interesting, right? So you can do that. But then it's like, you'll still struggle with your inattention in the classroom and at home. It's like you have to have the right, with ADHD, you have to have the right environment, but it can still come in. Whereas it's a triggered situational thing with trauma where your symptoms pop up and you respond. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did I make it confusing?
Yeah, I was thinking...
It is confusing. That's what, like...
I don't think that I'm confused, but I guess what I was thinking, where my mind wandered off to when you were talking about, being hypervigilant and having a trauma response
right.
to certain smells or sounds or, situations. I find myself, especially in the summertime when I'm outside a lot, I hear the cicadas buzzing, or I'll hear wind chimes, or especially for my parents' house, we'll just be outside. It'll be so quiet. It will be near a shady tree or something. And I'm immediately thinking of being at my grandparents' house, or, when the U.S. Open is on and we're watching tennis, I'm right. thinking of my mom's parents, because we always used to watch tennis with them, or like being on their porch or whatever. Like smells trigger those things, those memories and thoughts all the time. And I share that with our boys, like, oh wow, that makes me think of this. I feel like you and I talk about that sometimes, but when you say something has triggered you, I feel like it's always that trauma. Like it's...
Well, I was just going to say, those are really pleasant, nostalgic triggers that bring up these past things. These are the triggers are the things that tap your brain into remembering something, or having that same feeling, or and you had a very happy childhood mm-hmm. where those are positive things. So exactly, when those things come up for you, they're positive. And a lot of times when they come up for me, they're negative.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean they're all negative. Like, I have things that remind me of positive things. I just think they're not as readily available sometimes.
I think you have happy memories, and you share those with me often. I think what sparked this realization for me was I'm having... It's a triggered memory. At least when we talk about it, I feel like my triggered memories are happy memories. Your triggered memories are typically trauma related.
Well, but do you think that you just don't naturally talk about a negative triggered memory if it comes up?
Maybe, yeah. Because I definitely have, there are definitely times when I hear a song, and I can put myself... I do that with movies a lot. I'll watch something, or there's this... I can't put my finger on it, but there's this commercial that plays, and the song that plays, I have such an awful feeling when this happened. And I should have brought it up to you when it happened, because I don't know that it's on as frequently now.
Yeah, noted.
But for a long time, it would play, and I would rack my brain trying to figure out, where did I hear this song before? Or what happened that I heard this song? It just makes me sad when I hear it. And it's like it's like a car commercial or something.
You got to write it down.
Yeah. I don't know, if I hear it again, I'll definitely take note. But
that's part of the awareness, though. You have to just make a note of it when it comes up, and then write down, what are the feelings that... I do this in coaching. What are the feelings that it's bringing up in you?
Yeah, so I think I definitely do have those negative triggers, but there are so many more positive ones that you're right. I probably just don't notice, but I feel like I do notice, and I think I'm more sensitive because I'm defensive of you and for you too. So when you say or have one of those trauma responses, my immediate reaction is, oh, I feel bad for you, or I want to protect you from that.
Right.
Which, again, that's not a bad thing. And I'm not saying, oh,
No. And I here's the thing. You do have more positive memories. That's just the truth.
Sure, yeah.
That's just what it is.
Right.
And I think there is, part of your anxiety is not wanting to burden me. So you probably don't talk about negative triggers when they happen necessarily, unless they happen a lot.
Buckle
and
up,
you need to
because
I'm going to hear all of them now.
You open that door.
That's okay. So anyway, so there are executive function problems with both ADHD and trauma. And a lot of times you may be going in, for a diagnosis, or just going into a psychiatrist, like, what's wrong with me? And they think you have depression because they don't realize the ADHD is there, or they think you have anxiety. They don't realize that ADHD is there. So it can be a misdiagnosis. They can diagnose you with depression or anxiety like they did with me. And then also it can just be a misdiagnosis overall. So if they don't screen for both or all-encompassing situations to get a full picture, then you will miss bits and pieces. And it's not like when I first was diagnosed that she necessarily missed that. But that was the main, like, I did have ADHD. The ADHD was my biggest issue. And I think going back for that reevaluation, it's that I've learned so much to see the full picture that I wanted more of the full picture at that point, because I was still running into some roadblocks. So, I mean, if you look at also when you're going to a clinician to get diagnosed, I made a note to do this when I was talking about an ailment. And I think I brought it up to you one time before going to a doctor. Like, if you grow up your whole life, like I did, being, I was defiant, or I wasn't, like, I was talking back or whatever, for just asking clarifying questions or wanting to know why, instead of just like falling in line, or like acting like I'm distracted and I can't pay attention and I'm stupid, but my body was actually like in survival mode, and I was like, just like, I was all over the place being hypervigilant of all the things going on. So you go to a doctor and you're like, oh, I don't want to be called, a whiner or whatever. So you minimize your symptoms. It's not that bad, or, all those things. And, that's part of this.
Yeah. So if ADHD and trauma both show up as distractible and dysregulated, how do you tell them apart in an evaluation? So this is the greatest part about when I first got my first evaluation, is you have to look at the course of the symptoms. Did they happen early? Is it across, like I said, home, school, work? Are you seeing them throughout your life? Is it a daily, issue? That's where it's ADHD. And when there's just clear trauma triggers, there's certain events, or there's certain people that you avoid or whatever, you're looking more towards the trauma aspect. And often it is both, so you screen for both. If they don't screen for both, or they don't have the capabilities, maybe you go to someone else. But yeah, like the first thing she did in mine was asking about my childhood experiences, because I would have never gone to her and been like, I think I have ADHD. I had no idea. When she was looking at my childhood experiences and what, like, things that stand out to me that still are hurting me, that I feel like I can't move forward. And she was like, you had ADHD, right? And so when you're talking about how trauma makes your ADHD symptoms worse, if you think about the way trauma pushes your nervous system into, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, my natural response was fight. And your ADHD is already taxing all of your executive control. So, like, keeping your emotions in check,
focusing, planning, your impulse control to not say the thing to fight back, instead, preserve your energy because this person doesn't want to hear you. Your ADHD is already saying, sorry, trauma, hold my beer. I'm going to go after you and I'm going to say, that's not the truth. You are lying, and call it out, and then you get attacked again, right? So if you look at the way ADHDers with that lack of impulse control, with the no filter, with, their propensity to lean into the justice sensitivity of themselves and others, they're at a greater risk of CPTSD when both are present in your life, because you're doing these things that, seem like they're defiance or argumentative, or when really, if someone just understood you had ADHD and that's how you're approaching it and you're just asking a question, or you're sticking up for this person, you're not just yelling, right? There's a lot of, if we're not aware of the ADHD, but everyone's personal experience is going to judge your response without, thinking of any outside factors.
Right, but in an abusive environment, that consideration will not be taken into account.
Of having ADHD?
Yeah. If your dad knew that you had ADHD growing up, he's not going to be more empathetic. He's going to do the exact same thing. So I would take that into account when handling something with you or the boys.
Right.
But if you're in a traumatic environment,
even as an adult, they're acting like it's an excuse
right.
to everyone else. So, I can't even imagine if I actually were diagnosed as a child, how I would have been treated. But if you're looking at how the trauma makes the ADHD symptoms worse, the idea of like throwing gasoline on the fire is very appropriate. Yeah. Like, your symptoms in childhood and adulthood are showing up. And that's why, we score higher on the ACE test anyway.
Right. So trauma doesn't just sit next to ADHD.
No.
It intensifies it.
Right. Totally. Like, survival mode steals working memory. I was just talking in my recent therapy session about this, how, oh my gosh, it's overwhelmed my working memory, my bandwidth for tasks. I do have spikes in reactivity in a sense where it's more, I now know not to have reactivity in relational situations, but it's almost there's spikes in reactivity to myself, to being frustrated with, not getting to something that I had intended on completing. And a lot of the common signs that you're living with are task paralysis after a conflict. Can you move forward and do the things you need to do, or do you need to recover? You need days to recover from a conflict. Do you shut down immediately when you're criticized, or do you actually hold your own self-criticism as a positive thing to make improvements, and you take the same feedback from others? It all depends. But the explosive overwhelm is just a huge factor, because the weight of all of this, because it's not just ADHD, it's trauma too. It's so much worse. And when you're looking at the similarities between, when you're looking at what these similarities mean for not only getting the diagnosis, but then treating it, is you can't go in one direction or the other. You need to evaluate as a whole and be like, okay, what is it? Let's figure out, what is this? Is it both? Is it one? Is it something else? And so you want to go to a trauma informed person to get the ADHD evaluation, which they should screen for both. And I think it's supposed to include the ACEs test, but again, I'm not someone who's able to diagnose. So, but there's a lot of different tests that they'll run. And I also want to note that seriously growing up and going in, you have to just be honest in these appointments. Saying and holding back, not wanting to be a whiner, not wanting to make a big deal and acting like anything's worse because you'll be deemed dramatic. That's how you're attacked your whole life, but that's not what the doctor's there to do. They really want to know your symptoms. If you had a sprained ankle, or you think, you're minimizing your broken ankle and you're minimizing your broken ankle, acting like it's just sprained or acting like it doesn't really bother you, but you literally cannot walk. And you tell the doctor that, they're not going to know to even get an x-ray. They're just going to tell you to ice it and you really have the broken bone. So you really just be honest. So that this overlap, if it is present, you can get the proper care from a team that can, support your ADHD, support your nervous system, stabilize in a sense, kind of give you some safety. When you have that team approach and you feel like everything is manageable because you know that it's there. Again, the diagnosis doesn't fix anything. It just gives you a way to take steps into action to start doing what you need to do.
Right. And when you say like you have a team that will support you and help you manage, it doesn't all have to be in one place either. Like you talked about having someone who could diagnose ADHD and trauma. You're not suggesting though that it all has to be the same person or come from the same place. Like you have a therapist that you really love. You can have a coach. You can have a psychiatrist. So is it psychiatrist prescribes the meds, right? Or is it psychologist?
Or a psychiatric nurse practitioner.
There it is. I get mixed up all the time.
Yeah.
But, right? So it can be you're building your team.
Yes.
You are still in charge of that.
It's still like your family. So your friends that become your family that are supportive people to help support you.
Right.
So if you only treat ADHD, there's going to be unaddressed trauma there that's pulling you into a lot of unhealthy situations. If you treat trauma only, your ADHD planning, memory and stuff is going to be the thing that kind of derails you on your daily life. So then your best outcomes will be to do both and then see what happens. And each plan for each person is going to look different.
Mm-hmm. So what does an integrated plan look like day to day?
So an integrated plan would be just being practical. So you have to really use that honest self-reflection to evaluate what's really going on. So I'm going to run through these really quickly, but validate and name it. So if you're scapegoated, bullied, neglected, that was trauma. Naming it reduces your self-blame that you were taught to do and helps you choose the right path for support. Again, Attitude Magazine has a ton on this because ADHDers naturally internalize the criticism they hear, the 20,000 extra messages that we receive that are negative. We internalize it. And it impacts everything. So you can't ignore it. You have to validate it, name it, and know what to do with it. Then ask yourself the question, like, okay, what's going on here? Is this a threat response from my trauma? Or is this my ADHD executive functioning gone haywire? Like, what is it? If it's an ADHD thing, you could set a timer, do some body doubling, do some checklists. If it's a trauma response, if you're, getting one of those triggers, that take a short walk, do some grounding techniques, put your feet on the ground, take some deep breaths, right? Then reapproach. You'll see what works and what doesn't. Build your team. A trauma-informed therapist, absolutely. An ADHD trauma-savvy coach that will give you the structure and the skills. So it's very important to ask your coach and your therapist what levels of trauma and ADHD they work with. Some nervous system first aid is always like body movement, doing intentional breathing, which I really have to work on a lot more, but co-regulating with a safe person, like going on a walk, doing some movement reset between tasks to like move you to the next thing, right? Your environment and boundaries. So you need to reduce the threat cues, meaning if you live in a chaotic home, if there's tons of interruptions, if there's unpredictable demands, you all need to get on the same page. And, you can't heal trauma where it's wounding you. Mm-hmm. So you may have to separate yourself from relationships and look at them honestly. You have to come up with some scripted boundaries for people are going to gaslight you, people are going to criticize you. You need to protect yourself, your mind, your energy from those things. And then lastly, medication is not the enemy, and it may not also be the cure. It's not the cure, but like an avenue for you to take. For some ADHDers, meds will help you access these behavioral and processing skills. For trauma symptoms, there's appropriate therapies and certain medications that may help. So again, individualized treatment with this integrative care team that you come up with.
Yeah. I think this entire topic was really eye-opening for me.
I'm sure we'll talk about it more, like chunks of it, a little more specific. We'll hone in on some other things for future episodes, because I know that was a quick rundown. But
yeah, I think this is applicable to my own anxiety as well. This
right.
is back to school week. Everything's been completely different.
Nuts.
With one kid going to middle school, one kid in elementary, there being a 2-hour time gap between
right.
the times that they go to school. Breakfast is different. Just the entire routine
right.
is off, and I've had a lot of things where my anxiety has cropped up, and I've had to kind of go back and game plan and say, okay, this is the situation. I'm going to use some of my coping mechanisms, take a step back, answer the question calmly, get them out the door, and then we'll come up with a better plan for the next day.
And being realistic, like I can't do this right now. All of these things are happening.
100%.
Right?
You just have to kind of stop.
Right.
Again, expectation should be pushed aside, deal with the things that are happening right in front of
right.
you, and then regroup
right.
and reset those expectations.
Right. So if this episode hit home for you, subscribe it, please. Share it with someone who gets it, and leave a quick review. It helps more ADHD scapegoats find their way here. And if you're ready to dive deeper into your ADHD or trauma, check out my ADHD with Angie coaching program, or reach out via DM. You don't have to do this alone. You're not the problem. Till next time.